Hello, this is Dr. Ray Wisniewski, and I am the founder, CEO of NutriMost, Wellness and Weight Loss. And each week what we're going to do is come to you with some very special information. And so we have our radio program that is simultaneously broadcast across the internet on Facebook Live, and that is at 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. But we also come to you with some other special information on Thursdays. And this is really just a special presentation of this. It's the most significant research and news for creating your most beautiful, healthy life. And today, what we want to cover is something that I'll tell you what, this is going to be something that you're going to want to show other people, tell other people about, because we repetitively hear this, and that is that a calorie is just a calorie. And my question is, does the source of the calorie matter? And we're going to get some information on this, because most people think that it's a very simple equation. We talk about what that is. They look at it and saying, hey, here's the deal. It's all about the willpower to eat less calories. And not only is it the willpower to eat less calories, but then it's the ability to expend more calories by doing more exercise. And you'll hear people argue this constantly because they say it's real simple. It's the first law of thermodynamics. In other words, that a change in energy equals the energy consumed versus the energy expended. And if it's a calorie of Twinkie versus a calorie of broccoli, if you have 100 calories, it's the same with the Twinkie versus a broccoli. It's the same as 100 calories of a steak versus 100 calories of potato chips. As long as that, it's all about the numbers. So it's all that whole calories in versus calories out. I'm just going to tell you that that's absolutely not true. There's a lot of information on this, and I will tell you this, that obesity is more of a growth disorder than it really is an eating disorder. And so that's some of the stuff that we're going to bring you today, and we're going to show you that, because we all know a person who barely eats anything and they can't lose any weight. And then another person can eat and eat and eat, and it really doesn't even matter how much they eat, and they just won't gain weight. And so it becomes more the metabolism. And I always talk about that NutriMost is about looking at the body from three different perspectives. We have to look at it from a molecular perspective. We have to look at it from a cellular perspective, and we have to look at it from a metabolic perspective. In other words, how does it affect your body? So today we're going to go through some of these things, and we're going to take a look at the challenges, and we're going to take a look at some research as well, because one of the things that we know is that the field of epigenetics, in the field of epigenetics, we know that there are molecular switches that turn fat burning on, turn fat burning off. There's molecular switches that affect if you're hungry, if you're not hungry. There are molecular switches that determine so much of this. But beyond the epigenetics, which is your genes, and so each person affects their metabolism differently. See, here's the thing. It's not just, when we take a look at how this works and what it's about, I'm going to take a look at from different aspects of this, because number one, calories is the potential, and you have to realize this when we say the potential. Calories is only the potential. It's really the bonds within within the foods, because when you break the bond, that releases energy. So it's the release of energy from those broken bonds. So there's a couple things within that. Number one is digestion. It's the digestion of the molecules. It's our microbiome. What people don't realize is not only are we eating the food for energy, but so is our microbiome, which is the gut ecology. And what they've shown, research after research after research, is they've taken obese mice, and they've taken the fecal matter, the microbiome, the bacteria within that. They've taken it and put it into lean mice, and those mice become obese. So we know that the microbiome dramatically affects whether you're going to be lean or obese. And they've taken in germ-free mice, which have no microbiome per se, that's easily transferred, and they can determine whether the mouse will be a obese mouse or whether it'll be a lean mouse by depending on which fecal matter they transfer into that mouse. And your microbiome can be determined over a long term. And when I say long term, it doesn't even have to be that long, because what we're seeing is we can dramatically affect our gut ecology by what we eat. So that's one thing. Then we have to say, then you have to say, if the food isn't completely digested, that means that not all the energy is being released. So you have a couple aspects of this. It's our digestion. It's the digestion of our microbiome. It's what our bacteria are using for fuel. And then we have to say, okay, now food affects hormones. So it's that we know that, for instance, the thiocyanates, we know that that affects your thyroid. We know there's certain foods can speed metabolism, can slow metabolism. We know that there are enzymes that affect whether it's the white fat or the brown fat. The brown fat is turning and is using the fat for energy. So you're creating it to heat the body, to fuel the body. So that's another aspect. Food of you have things like fructose versus glucose, and how fructose affects hormones such as ghrelin, hormones such as insulin sensitivity, leptin sensitivity. So let's get into some of the research on this, and we'll take a look at this and how it actually affects. And you can absolutely see from this research that a calorie is not just a calorie. And the first thing I want to go through to is, and this is from Cell Metabolism. It says, mice under caloric restriction self-impose a temporal restriction of food intake as revealed by an automated feeder system. Now, this is much more involved in this, because what this showed was that when you eat at the wrong time, it affects your body weight, because there are circadian rhythms. And that's what they were able to show. And it's interesting because much of our research is done on mice, and mice are nocturnal, yet much of the research is done during the day. And yet they tend to feed and exercise at night. And what this showed was that mice fed the exact same amount were able to, in fact, they had 30%, it was a 30% difference in calorie restriction that they would have to, before they would lose weight, in the animals in the daytime versus at nighttime. So at nighttime, it was much easier for these eating the same amount of calories. And just remember this, it's the same amount of calories, yet if the mice ate at night, they were able to lose weight versus during the day. And this is a huge thing. And we can take that and take this other study, and this was done by the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And again, this is in 2017 as well. And what they showed is it says here, later circadian timing of food intake is associated with increased body fat. And what they found was that there is a relationship between body fat and as well as BMI and when people ate food. And it was tied to the time of the day. It's evident that there is a circadian clock. There's this body clock, and that body clock is going to affect how this works. In fact, this is the results. And what they've shown was the conclusion. These results provide evidence that the consumption of food during the circadian evening and or night, independent of more traditional risk factors such as the amount or content of food intake and activity level, plays an important role in body composition. And so what it's saying is that it depends on what time of the day you eat, whether that food is going to be turned into fat or it's going to be used for energy. And so what we see is there's so much that affects body weight. And let me just explain this for a second. See, here's the thing. When we talk about the first law of thermodynamics, and we say, hey, this is a real simple fact, and we talk about this very simple fact is that it's calories in versus calories out, and we say, no, that's absolutely not true, and they say, but that's the way the law of thermodynamics works. That's what it states. Well, not exactly, and this is the reason why, because the law also states at the very beginning, I should have put it up here just so we could see it, because it talks about a stable thermodynamic system. And first of all, if you were doing research, you know that when you're doing research that you have to have all variables have to be covered. And so you don't put variables into it. Well, in the human body, we have tons of variables. It's all about variables, in fact. Everybody's body is uniquely different. Everybody's chemistry is uniquely different. Everybody's metabolic pathways are uniquely different. So yeah, it's a calorie would equal a calorie, but you have to look at the other end of it. It's the end of that calorie. It's how it's used within the body. That's what makes the difference, and that's what's different than just taking it from a chemistry and saying, okay, if I burn this calorie, it's going to be, it doesn't matter where a calorie, because that's what energy is. And there's a couple studies out that show this professor who said, hey, I'll reduce my calories and I'll just eat like Twinkies. And showed that he lost weight with that. There's another person who took that supersized me and he did it in reverse. He just ate a small amount of McDonald's fries and a burger like every day and reduced his calories, and he lost weight. And yes, you will lose weight because you are reducing your calories, but that doesn't mean that a protein and a fat and a carbohydrate, they all act the same, because they don't, which I'm going to show you in just a little bit. Here's the thing about this, and we'll probably not go, I have to watch how long we spend on this. Anyone who knows me knows that I can talk and on this subject, believe me when I tell you, I could talk for hours per day for many days on the subject, and because there's so much evidence, and it's all about the way our body utilize that calorie. And by the way, that's the other thing. We have change in the energy is the energy consumed versus the energy expended. Now, that doesn't mean that this one causes this, or is it this side causes this. And what I mean by that is, as our body changes, as our body composition, as our fat mass changes, we change our metabolism, which changes how we consume energy and how we expend energy. We showed you last week, one of the things that we went over was the net 4 exercise in an aerobic versus an anaerobic, and how when you're an aerobic, it's raising cortisol levels. Aerobic exercise tends to raise cortisol, raise insulin, lower growth hormone, lower glucagon. Anaerobic does exactly the opposite. So it's raising growth hormone. It's lowering cortisol levels. It's lowering insulin levels. And you take a look at this, and that's what determines body composition. In fact, we're going to go through, it's about insulin sensitivity. It's about leptin sensitivity. It's about, one of the primary things is FGF21 sensitivity. And by the way, you can find out more information. You can about what we do. You can go to NutriMost.com. We encourage you to go to Facebook.com and go to the NutriMost USA page every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. We have offices across the country. If you call 855-NutriMost, that's 855-688-7466, it'll direct you to the office that's near you. That number can be used anywhere in the entire country. Or you can just you can go on online to NutriMost. When we talk about the fact that, let me just see here, when we talk about the fact that what we can do and how this works and how the body is able to overcome these challenges, here's the other thing. This is another hormone. This hormone is linked to brown fat, which is carbohydrate. And as it says, the interplay between fibroblast growth factor 21, that's FG21, and insulin action in the liver regulates metabolism. So what's talking about is this regulates how your body is affected by these different hormones. And you know, when we take a look at this, and the researchers have known this for a time, that there's an association between weight loss and glucose metabolism. There's an association between weight loss and the activation of your brown fat versus the white fat. So you have the good fat and you have the bad fat. And there is a distinct differentiation between these. You know, there's also, let me just tell you, there's one other thing that we don't even, that I wasn't even going to get into, but there's the thermal effect of food. And that thermal effect of food is that when you digest proteins, you're using 20 to 25% of the calories to digest the protein. And some people say even up to 30% of that. So protein, by the way, is highly satisfying, and it takes longer to digest. But not only that, that what we now know is that protein affects, in particular when we say protein, it's the arginine and lysine within proteins affect tanocytes. And tanocytes are these cells which extend into the brain. They're a type of brain cell, and they affect the areas of satiety. They affect whether you're going to be satisfied, and you eat less food. So when you're on a higher protein diet, you'll tend to eat less. You use up, it requires more calories to digest the proteins than it does carbohydrates or fats. So, but there is a problem. Don't just go out and start eating just tons and tons of all protein, because it is harsh on the kidneys, and we've seen that the effect on the kidneys. So that's not a good thing as well. So these are all things that we know of. We also know that if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, what that's going to do is that's going to spike your blood sugar. That's going to cause the pancreas to produce more insulin. As you produce more insulin, that's going to cause more fat storage. And so these are all things that occur. And then it affects your hunger. It affects the concentrations of glucose within your bloodstream. See, all this, when you eat refined carbs, it's basically going to make you eat more. It's going to make you produce more fat, and that continues on and on. Now, this is another study that was done, and what this is about is that when you limit your carbs, basically what that's saying is that you're going to reduce your liver fat more so than reducing just calories. And this was a big thing. And again, this was about how it affects your metabolism. And so it was more about not the number of calories. What they found out was that it wasn't determined by the number of calories as far as with the fatty liver, and that's fat in your liver, that's the bad fat. It was more about the carbs. So again, that when we talk about the fact that a calorie is a calorie is a calorie, it's just not true. And here we see, this is from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Higher compared with lower dietary protein during an energy deficit combined with intense exercise promotes greater lean muscle mass and fat mass loss. And this was a randomized trial. And basically what they said was they're looking to see why is it that, they're looking at, like, how do you lose fat without losing muscle? In other words, certain things catabolize the muscle, and we don't want that. And what they found was that when you're eating, this is what I started talking about earlier, when you're eating high protein, the people that ate higher protein, they lost more body fat. That's what this study said. Despite the calories, if you ate the same number of calories, but more of your calories were from protein, you lost more body fat. But it was more than that, because one of the things that they found was that not only did they lose more body fat, but they also did not lose muscle. In fact, the researchers found in this study that they actually gained muscle. So here They weren't losing muscle. They were actually gaining muscle, which is, again, this is a huge aspect of this. Here we have the secreted enzyme PM20D1 regulates lipidated amino acid uncouplers of mitochondria. And what this is about is this is the calorie burning pathways that were found. And so these fat cells have a certain calorie burning pathway. And what they found was that it's not, and again, they found out that it was certain times that the calories would turn into fat, and others times it would be burned as heat rather than stored as fat. And that was dependent upon this metabolic pathway that was found. And in fact, they found this was really interesting because, again, it was triggered by certain compounds, and these were N-acyl amino acids. And so, again, it's triggered by certain foods. And this is what it's all about. You know, when you start to talk about that a calorie is just a calorie, it's just not true. And there's so much research out there on this. And, you know, it's funny because it's almost like you talk to an average person and yet, you know, they know this. Yet it seems like scientists, yet doctors don't know this. They'll say it's simple. It's having the willpower to push yourself away from the table. It's having the willpower to eat less. Well, that's not even true, and I'll tell you why. There's companies out there that produce, and you look at these foods and you see all these different chemicals in your foods, and those chemicals are to program the brain. Those chemicals are to trigger certain areas of your brain to make you want to eat more. And so the more that you can have foods by God, in other words, foods by nature, versus these chemicals, you know, when you pick up a head of lettuce, it doesn't have a bunch of chemicals listed on it with it. You know, when you pick up broccoli, it doesn't have a bunch of chemicals listed on it. You know, there's a reason. When you have these refined carbohydrates, they affect the body differently. They can actually break a metabolic pathway, or they can stimulate a particular metabolic pathway or a particular pathway to allow you to want to eat more of that food, to allow you to hit the taste centers to want more of that food. I mean, it's really engineering science when we talk about foods and what these food companies are trying to do to affect you. And what you'll see is, and just take a look, you know, you have a country like India that hardly had any obesity. And now as American companies move in, as American foods come in, you see obesity is going through the roof. I mean, the rate, and it's before this westernized food was in, it was constant, and now it's just going up. And people say, well, that's because there's more calories. It's empty calories in the brains. There's a lot of reasons, but I'm telling you, they're breaking metabolic pathways. And it's the same way that you'll have people that have a very difficult time losing weight, and you find out that they have a particular polymorphisms. They have epigenetic factors, which mean that they're genes. But the great thing is you can overcome this when you know what to do, when you know that you have to get the advantage to say, how do I more support my pathways? If I have a broken pathway, what are the things I can do to help heal that? What are the things I can do to use that to my advantage? And that's what we're trying to do. That's where the research is leading us. And I think that NutriMost is on the forefront of that. We do it with the food list. We say, okay, what are the foods that are going to be better for you? You know, take a person, how many of you know somebody that, you know, it was ever since you had a hormonal disturbance? It may have been, it was after my last child, you know, you had a child, and then after that you started to gain weight. You didn't have any issues before. Now it seems like anything you eat just turns to fat. How about the person that has a hysterectomy, and you change the hormonal structure. You change that, and all of a sudden, in fact, the average person that has a hysterectomy gains a lot of pretty much weight. In fact, even going through menopause, the average person going through menopause gains over 20 pounds. That's the facts. And the calories were the same. In fact, a lot of times they eat less. And by the way, that's another factor. What we've shown is the research shows that every decade you need to eat between 100 to 200 less calories per day because your body handles it differently. There's so much to this. And you keep we'll show people the research on this, and yet you still have people that the very first thing that they do is they'll challenge you. And they say, and here it is, the effects of dietary composition on energy expenditure during weight loss maintenance. And basically, this whole study, if you read this study, it's from 2012. It's challenging the whole idea of whether a calorie is just a calorie. Because what they find is that when you reduce the surge in blood sugar after the meal, that's what makes a difference. In other words, your low glycemic foods are preferable than foods that are high glycemic, despite the amount of calories. So again, you have another study that just shows you that this is what it is. And so here we take a look, and you have to ask yourself, can we, whether it be whether from a genetic standpoint, can we affect our genes? Can we influence our genes? Can we influence metabolic pathways? And the answer is absolutely, absolutely. So when we say a calorie is just a calorie, that's true in the laboratory. That's true if everything was utilized. But it's not true in the human body, because we have something called the microbiome. We have something called digestion. We have something called our genes. We have something called metabolic pathways. We have something called the hormones and the neurotransmitters. We have something that, how does it affect your brain? How does it affect in the brain? How does the hypothalamus affect the pituitary? That affects your adrenals. That affects your thyroid. That affects your metabolism. See, these are all aspects, and your foods can affect your hormones. Your foods can affect these metabolic pathways, and it can affect your microbiome. And your microbiome all affects that. So I just, so this is just, this is a short, basically introduction to that a calorie is not just a calorie, that the source of your calories do matter, and that you do need to, there is certain things that are going to help, and every person is uniquely different to some aspect because they have a different biochemistry. It's not, if everybody's biochemistry was the same, in other words, if all of your hormones were identical, the levels were identical to one another, your insulin levels were the same. If everything was the same, it would be one thing, but it is not. And that's what makes this so unique and so different. Please share this information. People, because with so many people, when you start to talk about that it's willpower over whether to eat, when you talk about it's a calorie versus a calorie, that's like guilt. And that's what it is, because that becomes it's all my fault. And I'm telling you, it's not always your fault. And in many, many, many instances, particularly today, because we are affecting our biochemistry, because we are affecting our hormones, because we are affecting our neurotransmitters, because we are affecting metabolic pathways and our genes. Whether you have the gene or not, you can affect that, and that's, you can turn on those switches, you can turn off those switches. And there are metabolic switches that turn on and turn off. And we don't know all of them. That's another thing. We talk about deductive reasoning versus inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is knowing the fact that when you gather more information, then you can come up with a conclusion. Deductive reasoning is, one of the things with deductive reasoning is saying that we're all different. We're all unique. We have to look at the clues that the body gives us and say, what are the foods? What are the ways that we should use those foods? And there's certain pathways that we can stimulate. There are certain things that we can do that can have a dramatic effect. I think that NutriMost is on the forefront of doing this, in recognizing how vital food is, how vital nutritional supplements are, and even more so than that is the energy of the cell. How does the sun plays a role in this? The electrons play a role in this. The earthing or grounding plays a role in it. It's about optimizing your cell both from an energy standpoint and from a from that metabolic standpoint, from a substance standpoint. So thank you. Remember, there are things that you can do. And join us each week. Go to NutriMost.com. Join us on our radio program every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Eastern on NutriMost USA, on Facebook, NutriMost USA, and on Thursday. And throughout the week, we'll be giving you some other additional information on some of the most significant research, the significant news for creating your most beautiful, healthy life. And thank you for joining us. And please tell your friends, share this information, bring them onto our site. And we look forward to working with you, helping you, sharing information with you so that you too can create your most beautiful, healthy life.